Well, this morning we find ourselves confronted again by another pithy parable from Jesus in Luke's Gospel. Luke's Gospel, which is known for the narrative parable of the prodigal son, for the brilliant storytelling of the incarnation with mangers and shepherds and angels, for the beauty of Mary's yes response to God's invitation. My soul magnifies the Lord, for he has looked with favor upon his lowly handmaiden. Luke's Gospel, which at its core is about God bringing a new balance, a divine equity wherein those who have been raised up in positions of power and privilege are brought down, and those who are being kept down and oppressed or impoverished by the powers and principalities of this world are raised up, so that the good news ushered in by Jesus includes the promise of the playing field being leveled. It is in this context that Jesus tells this 3-verse, multi-layered parable with two characters: an unjust judge and a widow. Let anyone with ears to hear listen. In the power dynamic of this story, the judge is the character on top. He has status, wealth, a distinguished career, and what we know about the judge's character is repeated twice within the same parable, making it clear to Jesus' hearers and to us that these are highly important characteristics for us to understand the story. The judge neither fears God nor respects other people. We know nothing about his record in the judicial system of the day, nor do we need to, as Jesus calls him unjust based solely on these two character flaws, neither fearing God nor respecting people. For Luke's version of Jesus, then, this is a shorthand definition. Any person or any system that does not fear God and does not respect people is unjust. Now, over and against this unjust judge is the widow. There's no mention of charges, no backstory to share what political or legal wrongdoing the widow in the story has suffered, but whatever it is, takes center stage in her life. Of the two characters in this parable, she is certainly the one without power, as the world understands it. And yet, she is determined to do anything and everything that she can to elicit change. She is determined to somehow play a role in her own deliverance. Whatever the wrong she endured, she knew her own truth, knew what was right, found her voice, and used it over and over and over again, not merely as an act of resistance or defiance, but as the very vehicle for change. Her character, as opposed to the judge, is defined by persistence in the face of what most would deem a hopeless situation. She is a lowly, marginalized woman who has been wronged and could have given up. Nevertheless, she persisted. The judge refused her case. Nevertheless, she persisted. Day after day, she knocked and asked, and day after day, he refused. Nevertheless, she persisted. Her risks included humiliation, alienation, further marginalization, and no guarantee that justice would ever be served. Nevertheless, she persisted. And just to be sure that we don't miss the connection, Luke has bookended this potent little story with an editorial introduction and a closing exhortation. On the front end, the author lets us know that this whole back and forth between widow and judge is really about praying constantly and not losing hope in seemingly hopeless situations. And after the judge has relented and granted justice, his motives for doing so, while selfish, apparently aren't even important to the story. Jesus wraps all of this up by saying, listen to the judge. But then take one step further in your faithfulness. If even this corrupt judge can be made to listen to the appeals of the aggrieved, how much more will a God who reigns with true justice, a God who loves with grace, listen to his beloved ones who cry to him day and night? Observe the judge, but follow the example of the widow, he's saying. Her persistence in a broken system is the model for us to follow. Knowing, as you and I do, that God's economy of grace is not ruled by the whims of any person or any system in power. Her persistence is an emblem of faithfulness. Her boldness is rewarded. Her courage to draw upon what seemingly little power she has in a system that has sidelined her is the way forward for God's people toward our very deliverance. As one commentator put it, perhaps this is precisely the kind of faith Jesus wonders if he will find upon his return. A faithfulness that demands justice in a world coursing with injustice. A faith that persists in seeking life even in systems seemingly ruled by the forces of death. A faith that looks to God's promises and lives as if they will be fulfilled today. And if not today, then again tomorrow. Now, lest we think this parable is only applicable to political or cultural injustices, our friend and colleague in the Diocese of West Texas, Mike Marsh, who is now a retired priest, reminded me this week that the unjust judge shows up all over our lives, wearing many disguises: racism, sexism, hatred, fear, cancer, death, grief, addiction. Many years ago, I had the privilege of getting to know Merle and Madeline. Merle and Madeline moved to San Antonio despite the fact that she was already exhibiting signs of early onset dementia and ultimately Alzheimer's. They made the difficult choice to leave a home and a community that they'd known well to be near their son and his wife and 3 granddaughters here. Only a few months after Merle and Madeline had uprooted their lives and moved into San Antonio, their son was unexpectedly transferred by his job to Tokyo. So he and his wife and children had to move immediately. Merle and Madeline decided to make the best of their new life in San Antonio. She progressed through the various stages of dementia and then into Alzheimer's until it got so bad that she needed to be moved into a care facility near Oakwell Farms, where the able and nurturing hands of the nursing staff could attend to her needs around the clock. During one of several visits that I had with them, many months into her living in nursing care, Madeline sat in her wheelchair, unresponsive, probably not even cognizant of me or even her husband's presence in the room. Merle sat on the foot of her bed, holding their small dog, Pepper. And he told me many stories about Madeline's life that I hadn't heard yet. And at one point, in the midst of those stories, Merle looked up at me and said, "You know, Pepper and I visit her twice a day. We come in the morning to feed her brunch, and then we come back in the evening for a little while before saying goodnight and driving back home." And then with tears in his eyes, he looked at me and said, "I don't know why, but last night I was doing the math. 2 visits a day for almost a full year now. Pepper and I have visited Madeline 567 times. And every time I come in that door, I hope and I pray that she will recognize me. She doesn't, but I say that prayer every time." Alzheimer's was Madeline and Merle's unjust judge. the one who had all the power, the one who showed no fear of God and no respect for two very incredible people. You and I are surrounded by Merles and Madelines, by mighty, faithful widows, the beloved child of God who every day fights the need to take a drink, the beloved children of God in this city, in this country, throughout the world, who struggle to survive another day of inadequate food or clothing or shelter or not enough medicine. The beloved child of God living with the fear of a violent spouse. The beloved children of God coming into this country fleeing violence and seeking a better life for themselves and their children. Sadly, painfully, there are too many examples. And I imagine many, if not most of us, have found ourselves standing before an unjust judge when a change seems impossible and our pleas seem to be falling upon deaf or uncaring ears. And I know that in my life, at least, that's the exact moment that I am most tempted to give up. That I am most tempted to find someone close by that I can blame and yell at and curse. And all my wailing and weeping and gnashing of teeth is just exhausting and doesn't seem to make much difference at all. And those are the very moments, my friends, that I need this parabolic reminder to pray always and to not lose heart. When Madeline died, I officiated her funeral. Merle had kept showing up twice a day, every day, day after day, until the end, always hoping, always muttering that prayer as he crossed the threshold of her room. And I believe, no, I know that that is the very thing that kept Merle from losing heart. Though his constant visits and prayers did not cure Madeline's Alzheimer's, they did help Merle remain connected to Madeline. His constant prayers and presence allowed him to play a role in his own deliverance from the injustice of his wife's disease. Living the widow's faithfulness means that when we find ourselves confronting any and all unjust judges, that we offer our cries to God, and then we do whatever we can to bring about the change that we seek, trusting that God already is doing what God needs to do. Maybe that means we seek out a counselor. Maybe that means we find a support group to talk with. Maybe that means we feed the hungry, or we offer compassion to a grieving person. Maybe that means we call our representatives, or we participate in a peaceful protest. Maybe that means we speak and teach against hatred and racism. Maybe that means we strive for justice and peace, respecting the dignity of every human being. We do what the unjust judges in our lives refuse to do. Does following the widow's example mean that we will get what we want when we want it? That God will act miraculously and immediately? I wish it worked that way every time, but it doesn't. However, it does create the opportunity for me and for you to partner with God in our own deliverance. And that may be just enough to keep me from losing heart today. And tomorrow we'll start again.